What's going on, guys? Marco here with Front Yard Fantasy, and I am bringing you the team breakdown for the LA Chargers. Now, obviously, the Chargers have tons of weapons: Justin Herbert, Austin Ekeler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. But today we are talking sleepers, breakouts, and bust for these LA Chargers. Before we do, I want to remind you, hit me up on Twitter at Marco_14P. I will get to any fantasy football redraft dynasty questions that you might have. My DMs are always open. Drop me a follow. And if you want to ask questions about this video, you can. If you want to ask questions about any of my other videos coming out, you can do that as well. Or if you've just got some team analysis questions that you want me to jump into, I'm happy to do that too. All right, so let's jump into it. My sleeper for the Chargers is a running back that you probably have, if you've seen any of my content, 14 personnel or anything before, you know that I talk about this guy way too much, but it's Isaiah Spiller. So Isaiah Spiller right now in redraft is going as running back 40. And here's the thing, I get it. He's a backup running back, but Isaiah Spiller is in a rare situation, and he provides, he solves a rare problem for the Chargers. So the Chargers have obviously been looking for their RB2, their 1B to Austin Ekeler's 1A for quite a while, because we know Austin Ekeler, as much as he got tons of red zone opportunity and tons of carries last year compared to his career averages, that they are looking for someone so he doesn't have to quite hit those numbers. I don't think we're going to see a revert all the way back to what he was doing, but I could see a drop in carries pretty significantly, and I think some of the red zone opportunity he will also lose as well. Not a ton of it, because as we know, he was insanely efficient and did really well with those things, but they know that Ekeler is not built to sustain the workhorse role for this team, especially if they want to go deep into the playoffs. And so Isaiah Spiller is a guy who's 6'1", he's 215. He is one of the most talented, just pure rushers coming out of this class. You know, he's not one of those physical freaks. He's not, an athletic monster. He didn't blow up the combine. Part of that was injury related, but either way, no one who was a fan of Isaiah Spiller thought, man, he's going to go to the combine. He's going to have his draft stock shoot up into the first round. Nobody expected that, because if you watch Isaiah Spiller, what you realize is that he wins with smart football. He makes smart football moves. His combination of vision, footwork, and patience, I've said it on like every video I've ever talked about, is one of the most beautiful young running back styles that you'll see in the NFL. He's that talented. I've got Isaiah Spiller ending up as my running back 29 for 2022 after I finish my projections. He's at 182 touches on the season. And I understand some people are saying, that's like every touch in the backfield that didn't go to Austin Ekeler combined. And that's okay, because here's the reality. Sure, he might not get every touch, but this team is built now to run a little bit more. Their defense had added Khalil Mack. I think their defense, when healthy, will be a little bit more stout than we've seen, Derwin James, all of those pieces. And they also added a guard in the first round of the draft. They did a lot to say, hey, we want to protect our quarterback. We want to lean more on the run, and we want to be able to win games without just chucking the ball 45, 50 times a game, even though we can with Justin Herbert. And I think that's what Isaiah Spiller does for this team. He is someone who, even if Austin Ekeler is healthy, he will get on the field enough to provide low-end or high-end RB3 value, flex value, bye-week fill-ins, because he can run really, really well. That's obviously something I've talked about, but he's also a very good route runner, a very good pass catcher. His pass blocking is something he'll have to work on, but that's kind of a rookie running back thing that just has to happen for most of these guys. And Isaiah Spiller isn't immune to that. So he'll have to navigate a few of those things. So maybe, the first couple weeks of the season, he's not on the field as much, but I think by mid-season, he will start dominating the 1B touches. And like I said, I think he's locked in as a top 30 running back for the season. And if Austin Ekeler were to go down, Isaiah Spiller immediately jumps to the RB1 conversation, because like I said, he's not built like Austin Ekeler. He's 6'1", 215. He can do it all. He might not be as fast as Austin Ekeler. He might not be as savvy as Austin Ekeler is, because obviously Austin Ekeler is a 26, 27-year-old running back veteran who has learned how to play his position well. But Isaiah Spiller does it all, and he's only 20 years old. So in dynasty leagues, go get this guy too. All right, so that's my sleeper. breakout, and this is a light breakout because when you look at the Chargers, like the guys I listed earlier, we know who the real fantasy superstars are, but there's a guy who has gotten some talk in dynasty circles, and I think it's worth talking about for redraft when you're looking at near the end of your draft, because right now in redraft, Josh Palmer is going as wide receiver 66. Now, I'm not saying I have Josh Palmer ending up as a top 30 wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver 3, of course not. But here's the thing with Josh Palmer. He is going to be on the field, I would say at least 65% of the snaps, because he is basically locked down that wide receiver 3 role. And Josh Palmer is really unique in he does exactly what Keenan Allen does, not as good, and he's much younger. He's got a little bit of a different build, but he does all of the Keenan Allen-like things, and that's why the Chargers are excited about a guy like Josh Palmer. They've got a coach who's built and driven by analytics, and that's why they bring in a guy who already fits some of the roles and the wide receivers positions they have on this team. So he's going to play no matter what. And I think that is an opportunity, because when you look at Josh Palmer, I mean, he averaged 15.8 fantasy points a game as a starter. And I'm not saying he's going to be a starter for sure, but he's going to be on the field enough to get close to that, I think. And I think he could be more in like the 12 to 13 point range, but that's okay for this guy. If either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen were to miss any sort of significant time in 2022, Josh Palmer is one of those guys who has immediate wide receiver 2 upside. Last year, he averaged around 5.6 targets a game, which if he did that in 2022, that'd be 96 targets on the season. That's a solid wide receiver to go get that late in your drafts as wide receiver 66. Because what you want to do late in your drafts, especially in redraft, is you want to find the guys that are 1 or 2 circumstances away from stepping into immense volume. And I think Josh Palmer is right there. He's got 2 wide receivers who are either aging or have injury concerns ahead of him. And even without that, he's probably going to be on the field. So Josh Palmer is a breakout guy that I like. Not wide receiver, or not a top 30 wide receiver, maybe, but I think he's definitely in the top 40 wide receivers, and that's a 25 spot bump from where you're drafting him. And that's enough of a breakout for me to say, hey, it's a light breakout potentially for Josh Palmer. But like I said, if any of those guys go down, he's going to probably have a true breakout. He could be a wide receiver 2 for your team. All right, so busts. We talked about this. There's not a ton of people that you're overly concerned about when you look at the Chargers, but there's 2 tight ends on this team. And that basically means there's no tight ends on this team. They had Jared Cook last year. They brought in Gerald Everett because Jared Cook is gone now. And they have Donald Parham, who they had last season. He was kind of utilized in the red zone when he was healthy, and he did a lot with it. He's a big dude. I think he's like 6'7". And I think realistically, Donald Parham's not going to give up the red zone to Gerald Everett. I don't think that. And when we look at Gerald Everett, he's kind of one of those guys who we've been like waiting to break out, like a lot of athletic tight ends, but he's been perpetually uninspiring as a tight end. So what I think this team is going to end up doing is, between the 20s, Gerald Everett is going to kind of dominate a lot of the volume there. But when you look at red zone opportunity, it's going to probably go to Donald Parham. So this is basically 2 tight ends that I think are fine, but they're going to cannibalize each other. The only area or the only format I'm interested in either of these tight ends is Dynasty. I'm okay throwing Donald Parham on my bench because he is still young. I think he's 24 years old for a tight end. That's not that bad. And if Gerald Everett were to not work out, then they can move on from him fairly quickly and say Donald Parham's our guy, and that would be a game changer. But until we see that, these 2 guys for redraft especially are just basically untouchable. If you want to take like a very, very late round dart throw on them, which you can based on ADP right now, you can, but I just think there's better options. Brevin Jordan, the tight end for the Houston Texans. You're like, Texans, that's kind of gross. I would rather have him over both of these guys, and I wouldn't think twice about it. So don't really touch these tight ends in redrafts. In Dynasty, go get Donald Parham if you want. Throw him at the end of your bench because I think he's probably on your waivers most likely, and he could maybe get opportunity if Gerald Everett doesn't work out. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts below. Hit me up on Twitter. Drop me a follow at Marco_14P. Thanks for hanging out. This has been LA Chargers Team Breakdown. Peace.